In the tapestry of history, the story of freedom is a complex one, woven with revolution, struggle, and the enduring quest for justice. We have long grappled with a fundamental question: how do we design a system of government powerful enough to govern, but not so powerful that it becomes a tyrant? How do we prevent power from corrupting the very people who wield it? Philosophers and kings have offered countless answers, but few have had a more profound and lasting impact than the man we are speaking with today. A nobleman who looked not just at his own country, but at societies across the globe to find a universal principle for liberty. Today, we journey to the very heart of political science. We have a rare opportunity to sit down with Charles-Louis de Secondat, Baron de la Brède and de Montesquieu, to discuss his masterpiece, The Spirit of the Laws, and the enduring wisdom of separating power to protect liberty. Born in 1689 near Bordeaux, France, Montesquieu was a nobleman with a brilliant and inquisitive mind. Trained as a lawyer, he inherited the title of Baron and served as a president of the Bordeaux Parliament. This position gave him a first-hand look at the inner workings of law and government, fueling his intellectual curiosity. However, he soon left his legal duties to travel extensively throughout Europe, from the courts of Vienna to the bustling streets of London. His journeys were not for pleasure, but for study. He was a keen observer of different cultures and political systems, meticulously documenting the laws, customs, and climate of each nation. He was particularly impressed by the English constitutional monarchy, which he saw as a model for liberty. This extensive research would culminate in his magnum opus, a sprawling and encyclopedic work that would change political philosophy forever. Our conversation today will be centered on Montesquieu's most important work, The Spirit of the Laws. Published in 1748, this monumental treatise is a comparative study of various forms of government, laws, and societies. Montesquieu argued that laws are not arbitrary, but are shaped by a complex web of factors, including climate, culture, and geography. His most famous contribution, however, is his theory of the separation of powers, a revolutionary idea that argued for the division of government into three distinct branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. This is a concept that has become the bedrock of democracies worldwide.
Monsieur de Montesquieu, thank you for joining us. Your work, The Spirit of the Laws, is often cited as the foundation of modern constitutional government. Let's begin with the most famous idea in your book, the separation of powers. What is this concept, and why is it so crucial?
The separation of powers is the division of government into three distinct branches, each with its own specific function. There must be a legislative branch to make the laws, an executive branch to enforce them, and a judicial branch to interpret them. The reason for this is simple: to prevent the abuse of power. All history shows us that any man entrusted with power is prone to abuse it.
So the goal is to prevent a single person or group from having too much power?
Precisely. If the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person, there can be no liberty. The same is true if the judicial power is not separated from the other two. When all three powers are held by one body, there is a risk of tyranny. It is a fundamental truth that power must check power.
How do different forms of government, republic, monarchy, and despotism, differ in their fundamental principles?
A republic is governed by the principle of civic virtue and the love of one's country. A monarchy is founded on the principle of honor. A despotism, by contrast, has only one principle: fear. A despot governs by the arbitrary whim of a single person without law or rule. This is the worst form of government, as it leads to the complete loss of liberty.
You suggest that civic virtue is the principle of a republic. What does this virtue entail?
Civic virtue is the love of the laws and of one's country. It is the willingness to put the public good before one's private interests. In a republic, this virtue is essential, for when it is lost, ambition and greed take over, and the republic will surely fall.
You studied the English Constitution. What specific features of it did you find most admirable?
I saw in the English system a model for the division of powers. I saw a legislative body, Parliament, that created the laws, and an executive power, the king, that enforced them. I saw an independent judicial body. This system, with its checks and balances, ensured that no one part of the government could become too powerful, thereby protecting the liberty of the people.
What is the greatest danger to a democracy?
The greatest danger is when the people, in their love for absolute equality, lose their sense of civic virtue and become slaves to their own desires. When this happens, they lose respect for the laws and for the magistrates who govern them. This is how a democracy can become a democracy in name only, paving the way for a tyrant to emerge.
You famously wrote that a spirit of innovation is generally the result of a selfish temper and confined views. What did you mean by this?
I meant that those who wish to tear down everything are often those who lack a proper respect for the work of others. They are so consumed with their own ideas that they see no value in what came before. True statesmen, on the other hand, are heirs to a legacy, and they act with the same sense of duty toward those who came before and those who will come after them.
You argued that laws are not universally applicable. What do you believe shapes the spirit of the laws of a nation?
The spirit of a nation's laws is a complex product of its history, customs, religion, and yes, its climate and geography. For example, a people in a warm climate may be more prone to idleness, and so their laws must be more rigorous to ensure order. A people in a cold climate, who must work harder to survive, may require less stringent laws.
What role does commerce play in the health of a nation and its liberty?
Commerce is a great civilizer. It brings people together, and it encourages peace and moderation. A nation of merchants is a nation of people who have an interest in peace. It also promotes industry and a love of work, which is good for the spirit of the people. However, if it is not checked, it can also lead to greed and selfishness.
You wrote that the state of a society is revealed by its law. What did you mean by this?
I meant that the laws of a nation are a reflection of its character. They show what a people values, what it fears, and what it believes to be just. You can understand a people by studying its laws.
What is the role of the judiciary in your system?
The judiciary is, in a sense, the most important of the three powers. It is the power that applies the law to the individual. It is essential that the judges be impartial and that they act as the mouth that pronounces the words of the law. It is the most sacred and the most dangerous of all the powers, for it holds the life and liberty of a man in its hands.
What do you see as the greatest threat to a stable government?
The greatest threat is when a government acts contrary to the trust placed in it by the people. When a ruler uses his power for his own gain or attempts to make himself an absolute king, he puts himself in a state of war with his own people. This act of betrayal is the ultimate cause of instability, for it justifies the people's right to revolution.
How would your theories apply to a world with new technologies, such as digital surveillance and algorithms that make decisions about our lives?
I would warn against this centralization of power. If the powers of surveillance, of information, and of judgment all reside in one place, whether it is a government or a large corporation, there can be no liberty. The principles of the separation of powers are more important than ever. You must ensure that the power to collect information, the power to use it, and the power to judge its use are all held by separate hands. A government that knows everything about its people is a despotism, regardless of what it calls itself.
If you were alive today, what would be your perspective on the debate surrounding the tyranny of the majority in a world of social media where public opinion can be so quickly and powerfully mobilized?
I would say that the tyranny of the majority is more dangerous today than it was in my time. The internet has given every man a voice, which is good, but it has also given the majority a powerful tool to silence dissent and to enforce a kind of intellectual conformity. A man can be ostracized and ruined by public opinion in a single day. My advice would be this: cherish the right of the individual to be wrong, to be peculiar, and to hold a different opinion. For without this liberty, your society will not be a collection of free men, but a collection of automatons.
Closing reflections and summary. And so, our time with Montesquieu concludes. His vision, meticulously crafted from years of observation and study, has left an indelible mark on the course of history. He taught us that liberty is not a happy accident, but a careful act of design. The genius of his work is in its simplicity. To protect freedom, we must divide power. His legacy is more than just a theory. It is a practical guide for building a government that can withstand the tests of time. He reminds us that the quest for liberty is not about finding the perfect leader, but about creating a system where no single leader can wield unlimited power. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of ideas, and until our next conversation, remember to be a vigilant guardian of your own liberty.